Crushing the cultural Marxists. Breaking the grip of corrupt oligarchs. And taking back our country through America first. Here's your host of Liberty and Reality, John Henson.
Welcome back to Liberty and Reality. Sorry, I haven't had time to put out a lot of content recently. Been pretty busy this summer with family stuff and class and just enjoying the sun while it lasts here in Washington State. But I'm trying to get out at least one episode a week, so please bear with me. But my time has not been spent idly. I've been getting into some of the local political issues. I didn't get back here. I was serving my country until 2023. I am a lifetime Washington State resident, and I've lived out here in Kitsap County since 2023. At least I've owned property here since 2023. But just getting back into the swing of things and getting into some of the politics in this area, attending some events, observing some events, and I want to talk about a couple of those things here in this week's podcast. Of course, usually I kind of talk about some more philosophical and conceptual type things, things that I see affecting the country. But this week, I'm going to add a little bit of local politics in and talk about some things that bother me. And at least, even if you're not in the area, you can understand some of these common themes across the country, things that are happening, and things that maybe if you don't live around here, you should look at in your own communities, because these same themes of cultural Marxism, the oligarch class, just spreading their little fingers downward through the political parties. You can see it if you look close enough, even down this far. So it just doesn't end at the federal level or even the state level. It gets down to the local level. So just watch out for those things, and I'll get to that part here in a minute. Also, I guess we got to talk about Lindsey Graham has passed away, and Mitch McConnell is missing. I guess there was a proof of life picture put out, but strange things are afoot in the U.S. Senate. Really weird way that Lindsey Graham went. I don't know. Obviously, a lot of conspiracy theories. The official story is he had some sort of heart condition and he passed away suddenly, which may well be the truth. But it reminds me of Breaking Bad, my favorite show of all time. If you watched it, you'll know about Walter White's ricin tablet. It was kind of a dramatic thing. It was a prop that was used through just about the whole series until the very end, when he used it to poison, one of his antagonists, Lydia. And when I look at the Lindsey Graham thing, he just came back from Ukraine and suddenly falls sick and dies. It reminds me of that ricin tablet that Walter White had. So keep that in mind. I don't know, but weird, just weird. Also, I did go see a couple of movies here over the last week. I went to the theater and saw Evil Dead Rise. Great horror flick. I love that series. And the thing I like about that is it dives right into some pretty gory stuff. It dives right into the horror. It's really, I just like that style of movie. It's really cool. And I've liked the Evil Dead series since it first came out, but it's a little bit different from the originals. There was a lot of comedy in Sam Raimi's original movies, at least after the first one. And I think Sam Raimi was probably doing a lot of acid when he made those first movies too. So they were kind of odd, but they were cool. They were cool horror movies, and they weren't like anything else out there. And this Evil Dead series is the same. So definitely recommend you check it out. The only thing I don't understand is why the dudes are so weak in each of these movies. If you are an Evil Dead fan, you'll remember the Ash figure. We all loved Ash, and that was Bruce Campbell's character. Sorry, and he was the hero, kind of a an odd hero, but He was pretty damn cool. And he fought evil the coolest way possible with a double barrel shotgun and a chainsaw. So that's the only criticism I have of this movie. They need to make some of the dudes tougher or something, or make one of the females tougher, have her run around with the double barrel and chainsaw. I don't know. Whoever it is, make him cool, right? Make him cool. Maybe you can get an MMA fighter, female MMA fighter or something to go out there and be in that movie. Nobody's soft. You need somebody really cool and tough. I don't know, but I did enjoy it. I'd recommend it. The other movie I saw was the movie Obsession. And that movie is freaking crazy. It is intense. It comes off at the beginning. It's kind of a date night movie, and then it takes a sharp turn. And I would love to have been in the theaters with the guy who took his took his date to see that movie the first time. It is crazy. The first few minutes of the movie, probably the first 20 minutes, are kind of a slow build, very cheery and happy, and then things just go off the freaking rails quick. So I really loved the dichotomy of power dynamics between the female and the male characters. And the female character took that to the extremes and shows you that definitely the female character was not weak in this movie by any means. And it was different than Evil Dead. Like, this girl was what you would expect. I don't want to give it away. I won't spoil it. I'll let you watch it, but make sure you probably want to have a drink while you're watching it, because it's very intense. And it's different than any movie I've seen in recent history. But one thing I will point out is it was a kind of made on a low budget. It was an independent film, and it was just huge. So I think there's been a turn in the culture with movies recently. I'm not seeing a lot of the wokeness. Thank freaking God. Hopefully things are changing, although I'm not hearing good things about The Odyssey. So I think I'll wait and watch that one at home. I think my next movie is probably going to be the new Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my younger son's favorite superhero. So, and I like Spider-Man too. So I'll be watching that one. I did attend the Kitsap County monthly Libertarian Party meeting. It's held here at a great place, Whiskey Gulch in town, right on the water. Beautiful view, great spot. And every month they bring in, at least since I've been here and I've been attending, they'll bring in a couple candidates for local office. And I hope, I really wish those meetings would catch on. We had a pretty good turnout this time, but there's a lot of space. And I definitely recommend, even if you're not a libertarian, come out to those meetings. Check it out, because you get to have one-on-one interaction with the actual candidates, and you get to ask questions. You get to watch them answer questions. You get to see who they really are, at least for a couple hours in the evening. So it's pretty cool. And Whiskey Gulch has the best beer in town. So keep that in mind. They have good burgers too, and tacos. So anyway, I got to see Travis Couture. He's a Republican running for the 35th district. That's not where I live. That's up north of here and over to the east. Mason County and one other county out there. I can't remember, but he said all the right things to a libertarian audience. I don't know that he's a libertarian, but he advocates small government, fiscal responsibility, and that's what Republicans always say they do. So that's the only problem I have with Republicans. As we've talked about before, the Republican Party is the true home of libertarians, but they never act like libertarians these days, at least definitely not fiscally. So I'm not sure. Hopefully this guy will do as he says. He even threw a hike quote for good measure. So he knew his audience. That was pretty cool. Only thing I didn't really like about his answers is there was a question about ballot security, about some folks that had received a ballot even though they lived out of state. And he claimed that the process to validate mail-in ballots was legitimate. But tonight is the night that Trump gave his speech on voter security. indicated that through some classified reports that have been released, I haven't seen them, that China has been deeply in our election process. And they have names and information from a lot of voters, of like 250,000. But if you know anything about China, China has done a lot of interfering with elections. Australia caught them red-handed. I mean, it's not. They're very sophisticated in doing this, so it's no surprise to me to find out that China's involved, and it's really kind of crazy. I don't know. I really don't even know what the libertarians. I'm sure there's a lot of libertarians out there that would probably disagree with me, but I really think that we need to have voter ID. You have to prove that you're a citizen to vote in this country. There's just a thing that you accept Western civilization, you accept American culture when you're a citizen here. You have to think about this. Think about this. So there's far more Chinese, and I'm talking about Chinese from China, communist China. Far more of them than there are Americans. There's far more Indians than there are Americans. Does anybody want the United States to adopt Chinese communist culture or Indian culture? There's a lot of different cultures in India. Lots of variety of things, but, do you want that to replace Western civilization? Because that's what you're going to get with mass numbers of illegal immigrants, or, having people here that are not citizens. There's something that goes along with getting your citizenship that makes you value being a citizen of the United States, of being a part of our culture, American culture, Western civilization. So I don't know, but I didn't hear him say that he was in favor of voter ID. And that was the only thing that I really found suspect with him. And anyone who's been in Washington for the last 20 years remembers the travesty that happened with Dino Rossi back in, I believe it was 04, where Rossi won twice. There's 2 recounts that were conducted, and he won on both of them. It was a very close election. I think the first count was separated by a few thousand, and then the second one was a few hundred, and then amazingly, the third time, a bunch of votes were found in the King County facility where they count votes. They were hidden under some machine, supposedly. Just came out of nowhere. It's amazing, and put the Democrat over. So this game of absentee ballots has been going on for a long time. The Republicans in Washington never sued over this. They never took it where it needed to be. So I would expect Washington state Republicans to be even more sensitive to these issues, but apparently this guy isn't. So thumbs up on his policies, thumbs down on his ideas, or maybe I just don't know his ideas on voter security. But that was the only thing I had to say about him. And then the other person that was out there was a guy named Daria Ilgen, who I didn't butcher his name, even though I heard it, I forgot it. But Daria is running for the 23rd district up in Paulsbo and Bainbridge Island, I believe. He's running as a Democrat. And I got to say, I like the guy. I like the way he talked. He emphasized that he wanted to work across the aisle. And I hope that's true, because I see a lot of Democrats say that and then they don't do it. And they end up just jumping on Team Democrat. I think a lot of it is, especially for young guys like Daria, is peer pressure. So they get pressured by the senior members of their party, and the Democrats have taken this by any means necessary approach to power and politics. So I hope he's really serious and that he can be strong enough to keep that approach. He did talk to me after the meeting, which I appreciated, and I do hope he wins his primary, because his opponent is literally an ex-con, and she's just another one of these DI, critical theory, crazies that says the craziest things and gets Democrats all worked up behind it. I don't know how they're doing this, but um, yeah. Anyway, he seemed to have a lot better head on his shoulders, a lot more common sense. So I hope he wins. He did mention at one point that he hates Trump. And so for somebody that says the general message is that we need to work together and then talk about how much he hates Trump, I got to question that willingness to reach across the aisle because there's a lot of Trump voters in this area and they're pretty strongly loyal still. I'm not one of them, and I let him know that. I mean, there's some things Trump does well that I still like, but there's some things obviously I've talked about before that he's really disappointed me on. So I did explain to him my concept, my idea that you have to separate Trump's movement, America First, from Trump himself. And I suggested that as a Democrat, he look into that, look at what people valued, with the America First movement. Because it was the movement, as I said, that brought together conservatives, libertarians, and progressives. It is the more middle ground. It's the more populist party platform. It just, it's been divided from within. So I don't know. We'll see if he listened to me. He seemed to listen. At least he didn't run away. So I appreciated that. I was 4 beers and a rum and coke in at that point. So I may have just thought I was a crazy drunk, and I'm a big dude. So maybe, I don't know, but I was not trying to intimidate the man. And at least I got a chance to tell him how I felt. So Daria, if you get a chance to listen to this, you do have my card for my podcast. I am on your side. So if anybody does know Daria that's listening, let him know. Thumbs up. Keep going, buddy. And I'm not voting, he's not in my district. So all I can do is wish him luck. Now, in this episode, as I said, I'm going to get into some local political issues. Then I'm going to talk about some of the things we went over last episode. I just have to tighten up some things that I didn't address. It's not that I didn't necessarily consider them, but I wasn't thinking, I wasn't really intending to talk about issues way back in the early 20th century. But some of those glaring things I need to go back and tighten up so I can explain how we got here to this point. So I'll get to that. The first thing locally I want to talk about is some things going on with the city council. And this is a new issue that one of our local political reporters, somebody has a Substack and is on Facebook locally, comes to those Libertarian Party meetings, attends a lot of local political events. Tony Cohen has been talking about for a while. And so I familiarized myself with what was going on, and I wasn't able to attend the last Port Orchard City Council meeting in person, but I did watch it on YouTube. But a couple months ago, the council chose to remove a sitting member, somebody named Heidi Fenton. And this is somebody who was elected by voters, and they chose to essentially kick her off the council behind closed doors without public discussion. Now, their story is, well, we were just trying to save her embarrassment, save her from the details getting out. The only member on the council that called out this hypocrisy and really came to Fenton's defense was Shira Dedman. And I've interacted with Dedman on social media before. I think her politics, at least her ideas on economics, are left at center. But I give her great credit for strenuously standing up for the people. The council is officially nonpartisan, but there are definitely some lean left and lean right folks, lean Democrat and lean Republican folks. So there is politics in there. Sorry. I don't know what's going on. I get bugs and stuff flying around here in my studio. So sorry about that. But she did a great job standing up for Fenton from the very beginning of the council meeting. And the council tried to censor her for this, saying that she violated the rules. They would not let uh, they would not let Heidi take her seat where she was supposed to be, where she was elected to be. They told her that she wasn't allowed to sit up there. It's crazy. And anyway, they're kind of bringing this on themselves by being so freaking corrupt. The council claims that Fenton resigned, and Fenton strenuously denied that at the meeting in public, and she's done so several times. There was some accusation of her being drunk at council meetings and potentially being charged for assault or being threatened to be charged with assault for grabbing a man's arm. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there for that. But I got to say, really, and this woman is not, this isn't a monster. She doesn't come off as a former wrestler or football player. She's a normal sized woman, and grabbing a man's arm, I don't think that dude was under threat. She wasn't punching him, biting him, scratching him, just grabbed his arm. I don't know what the context of it was, but that seemed pretty crazy. I'm pretty sure the guy wasn't threatened, so sounds strange. Now, let's just be honest. We all know that there's some mind-bending substances in politics, and having a drink in a closed council meeting is probably not out of the ordinary. So I don't know how drunk she supposedly was, but if the council member was so drunk that she was unable to take part in the meeting, I would just have to say that there's got to be a different solution than completely removing her off the council. But they didn't even claim that. They claimed that they smelled alcohol on her breath, and that's it. That's it. Not that she was so drunk that she couldn't do her duties or anything like that. And my understanding is these meetings, they take place in the evening. I didn't seem like this was the public meeting. This seemed like more of a business type meeting. So whatever it was, I wasn't there. I can't verify what happened, but it sure as hell sounds like Fenton is being railroaded. And voters showed up. They're pissed. A lot of people told city council exactly what they felt. And the council hid behind the city attorney's legal advice. They basically said, well, city attorney said we could get rid of her. Apparently, Fenton said something along the lines of, well, I better quit because she was being threatened with criminal charges over this thing. So, but it wasn't I'm done, I'm quitting. It was more of a off the cuff, probably set out of anger. I don't know. In any case, it doesn't seem like a legitimate, lawful action just to kick her off the council. The voters selected her. There's got to be a formal process. Does not seem like that was followed. I mean, when you consider at the federal level, it takes 2/3 of Congress to get rid of a sitting member of Congress. It's a high bar, and I gotta think it's a high bar here too. But whatever, we'll see. What I can say is the city attorney, I looked into her, and I don't know what her motives were, but she's not from Port Orchard. She's from Bellevue, and she's from a Bellevue law firm. Bellevue is kind of an elite area, a lot of tech money in that area. So it didn't make sense. We do have attorneys in Port Orchard, but the attorney is a position appointed by the mayor directly. It's a contract position. The city attorney is not elected. They don't have official power. They're just there as advisors. Her name is Charlotte Archer. And ironically, I can't attribute any motive, but ironically, she works for a law firm run by the uncle of former Washington State Governor Jay Inslee. So I don't know, but I'm sure there's nothing to see here, right? Yeah, sure. Okay. So after the fireworks over the Fenton issue calmed down, there was another presentation from the Port Orchard City Council. And this is where I get into more of this ideological subversion being forced down on us. Now, there was an inclusion council that briefed the city council. And what I found out is that the governing, I can't remember what they're called, the founding principles, that's what it was, for the Port Orchard City Council. There's a DEI proclamation, basically. It just says that of all the things that the council will follow, philosophical things, one of them is diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm like, what? That's Marxism. Again. So every decision that Port Orchard City Council makes has a cultural Marxist filter it has to go through. And by the way, that came from the actual county, Kitsap County. I'm sure they're following Washington State and all the way up. The whole state is just infused with cultural Marxism. So all the way down to the local level, it's there. And it was the Inclusion Council and the inclusion of DEI in the city charter, whatever the hell it is, that was approved by a Republican-leaning governor or a mayor. Of course, nonpartisan, as I said, but you can find out where the different people on the council lean. I got to roll my eyes at that. So I don't know. It just seems crazy. But this process began with the city's HR director, and it was made an official part of the city's operating program back in 2022, where Kitsap County essentially just gave their program to Port Orchard, or Port Orchard copied it. So this was established through a company called Talitha Consultants. This company operates a consultancy that goes out and basically just teaches Marxism, cultural Marxism, critical theory. You've heard these stories to different organizations. And they got paid almost $50,000 to do it by Kitsap County. $50,000 of taxpayer money. They provide training that forces organizations to view everything through a strict lens of racial power, of white oppression. So they divide their staffs. They emphasize the negativity of whiteness, and they seek to make people victims is what they do. That weren't victims. People that don't feel like they're victims, they convince them they're victims. This is how the ideological subversion works. This is how they divide us. So they put the critical theory into practice by separating employees, the training groups based on their race, and attacking the workplace rules, the workplace rules that have been there for however long, and have worked for years and years. And they say they need merit-based hiring because the old workplace rules are white supremacy. They demand that power and resources be redistributed based on group identity. It's the same old crap. That's what these companies teach. By swapping out the classical Marxist economic warfare for racial identity warfare, they just use cultural Marxism to take control and restructure these institutions. I fail to understand what the value of these companies are, other than just to divide people and spread propaganda. But city councils, county, states, they're hiring these groups. It's silly, and spending our money to do it. So I definitely recommend that you look into that with your local county and city. And it's funny, when I listened to the Inclusion Council's recommendations, or their report on the how it was going, the success of these. I guess there's like a quarterly report they have to give to the council. They said that the employees were unhappy over the amount of work, the workload they had. They weren't provided sufficient work-life balance. Well, it's amazing what happens when you hire for DEI, not for quality. I'll bet you there's a few employees complaining, and there's other employees that are probably taking it easy. I don't know. Just my guess. Not surprisingly, the Inclusion Council's membership is decreasing. So it seems that people are waking up. I think there is there may be a change happening in the culture. I don't know. But on the other hand, I just heard this week that the Democratic Socialists of America's membership just went over 160,000, which makes it the largest Marxist group in the country. I don't know how many other Marxist groups are in the country, but oh yeah, I don't know. Seems like the young people are being taught this stuff. What do you expect? If you're going to put this stuff in your city council, in your county council, or whatever, in your government, in your institutions, you're just teaching the kids to do this stuff, to believe in this stuff. They're going to follow you. If you're one of the older people, if you're one of the adults in the room, they're going to follow you. They're going to follow your example. Doesn't seem like a good example for them. So, I don't know. I just don't like paying for this garbage. So, um, yeah, that's what's going on in Kitsap County. Now, I want to transition to what I was talking about last week, how the oligarchs took control of our economy and used Marxism as a tool of that control. But we got to go back even before that. To understand how we got here, we have to go back to November 1910 to the Jekyll Island meeting. It's an island off the coast of Georgia where Congressman Nelson Aldrich put together a secret meeting with the four biggest bankers in the United States. And these may have been, well, these were just certainly some of the richest men, got to be top 10, every one of them, richest men in the country. So this was a group of elites making plans for all of us. That sound familiar? It included Paul Warburg. He was a immigrant from Germany, and he had direct ties to the Rothschild family, which a lot of people talk about and about their schemes and how they have controlled politics through banking. And they were also responsible, at least one of their members, for the founding of Israel. So they definitely get a lot of suspicion, a lot of theories about them. But this meeting led directly to the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, when Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act, which Aldrich led the charge on. So with that single move, Congress gave the power of the economy over to the banks, because the private banks are able to create credit, create fake money. Now, a third of our economy is fake money. A third of our economy is credit. And they get rich off of that. So there's an ulterior motive. Now, when you hear the annual GDP calculation, the production of our economy, how well our economy is producing, it's not just production, but credit creation is part of that. Government spending is part of that. It's not real production, but it's baked into that calculation. So you never really get an honest calculation of how the economy is doing, because it's just fake money, just created out of thin air. Once the banking cartel had their hands on the economy, they had to eliminate ways for citizens to essentially gain wealth, because they needed the paper money. They needed a system to issue their credit on. That was the dollar. So in 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, criminalizing the private ownership of gold. That's right. The government essentially seized everybody's private gold. I didn't know that. That was kind of shocking. That's one of those things They don't teach you about it in school. And they didn't really call it seizing. They just forced people to sell their gold to the government, and they gave them dollars for it. So FDR bought the gold from private citizens for $20.67 per ounce. And a couple of years later, he raised the official gold price to $35 after he'd already taken gold from the private citizens, gave them dollars, immediately devalued their dollars. That's a scheme. That's really interesting. So, yeah, he just took away, he basically stole their money. The Supreme Court was about to rule this unconstitutional. It seems obvious that it's unconstitutional. But FDR essentially blackmailed them. He threatened them. He essentially said that it didn't matter what they voted. He wasn't going to respect it. He wasn't going to follow their decision. And of course, about the same time, he started talking about packing the court, something that you hear the Democrats talking about today. Now, thank God, back then, even the Democrats in Congress thought that was crazy, so he never did it. He talked about it. Definitely a plan of his. So the judiciary, they just capitulated because they were scared of the executive branch's power. They were scared of FDR's power, what he would do. So they upheld the decision, keeping the seizure of gold constitutional. And don't forget the people whispering in FDR's ear, Marxists like Harry Dexter White, high-level Treasury official who was later exposed as a Soviet asset. Now, White also helped design the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. That was the agreement that officially made the U.S. dollar the global reserve currency. That was backed by gold internationally. This is the system by which foreign countries, primarily the Europeans, would put their gold in American vaults. They'd be given dollars. We talked about how that fell apart with LBJ's spending later on. And the holding of private gold was illegal until Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. So, we've talked about this, and just because of these, secret meetings and schemes and, obviously unconstitutional actions is how we got here to this unlimited wealth creation that is enriching the oligarch class. Once again, I get this pushback all the time, including from, conservatives or fiscal conservatives, that I'm wrong, that, that basically billionaires earned it. And a lot of them did. Once again, I'm not talking about all billionaires. I do not begrudge somebody from making money legitimately. People I'm talking about are the ones, like BlackRock and Soros. I went through the whole list that are basically getting rich off of assets. They're making billions of dollars only off of assets. They're not producing anything. They're not creating jobs. They're just pocketing the money. Well, they're putting in banks who are pocketing the money, I guess. But that's the people I'm talking about. And they do that from inflation, from their assets being inflated because of government spending, because of government debt. We also talked about, I said that after 2011, the Occupy Wall Street movement, there was an obvious change in the tone, and there was an obvious and rapid spread of, Marxist propaganda, cultural Marxism, critical theory across the country in every institution. And I didn't know that somebody had actually done some analysis of this. A man named Zach Goldberg did analysis, and he tracked exactly that from 2011 to 2012. He looked across media and academia and just across all the institutions, and he was searching for terms like whiteness and white privilege and intersectionality, systemic racism, and they exploded over 1,000%. It's exactly what I told you about the oligarchs, the people that had control of the institutions. They were behind this. They were behind this. They pushed the spread of that propaganda. And that's where we are now. And they don't care about the socialists spreading because socialists means more government spending, more debt. They're going to make more money off it. And the people that are, particularly the young people who adhere to socialism, they're going to get crushed under it. We're all going to get crushed under it, especially them, because they're young, they're naive. You hear them talk, they're really ridiculous. Some of the things they say, because they have no experience in life. Kind of sad, but they're gonna screw us all because they're just naive. They're ignorant. They don't know. They've been sold this idea. Very powerful forces have sold this idea to them, and if it continues to gain steam, it's going to be their ruin and ours. One thing I also found out about was the World Economic Forum globalists, the United Nations, put this program together called the Young Global Leaders. And through this, they put people of the ideology they were pushing in positions, leadership positions, across our government, across our society. And, you had people like even Mark Zuckerberg. He was a young global leader. You can look into that. I don't want to list all the young global leaders. There's a bunch of them out there. So, this has been a plan that has been in the works for a while. As I said, the first big color revolution against the oligarchs occurred back in 99 in the United States anyway. And maybe there was others around the world they were looking at, but I think they had been preparing for a while. So, now, how did the oligarchs disseminate their message so quickly? Well, the primary avenue was the Ford Foundation under its president, Darren Walker, and his multi-billion-dollar philanthropic, there's that word again, fund, which he distributed across NGOs and activist groups and universities and all the same old stuff, all the same stuff that Yuri Bezmenov talked to us about, the institutions. And it was all pushing this critical race theory and cultural Marxism. And they also partnered with organizations like the Rockefeller Foundation, Open Societies of Soros, which, that's just the filter through which they gave this money to these organizations and got their dollars into the ecosystem. And from there, you had people like Ezra Klein at Vox, who would send the message out through her morning report that was eventually shut down. But Ezra Klein was the one that, she was the disseminator. She was working for them. So look into that stuff. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. I wanted to close the loop from our last episode and talk about how that came about and some of the things I failed to mention last episode. So I will look at getting more content out. At least I want to try to do an episode a week. Like I said, I'm pretty busy this summer, but at least 1 or 2 episodes a week. I appreciate you continuing to watch this. The show is, it's just a work in progress. I'm making progress, and the setup and the equipment and the way I do things. I'm still a beginner at this. I'm doing it myself, so it is a learning process. But I appreciate you for watching it, and please feel free to give me feedback. And thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Take care.